I must say at morning tea there I did feel some Catholic guilt of drinking my coffee out of a polystyrene cup. But we now move to the experiences, and the first of the experiences will be presented by Father Ben Nebres from the Philippines. I'd now welcome Father Ben.
Good morning to all of you. My work has been heavily in the university, Ateneo de Manila. It was founded by the Spanish Jesuits in 1859, so 155 years ago. We have a university, of course. We also have a grade school and a high school. Most of what I'll share with you are my work with university students, but they went to our grade school and high school also, many of them. So the context of what I want to share with you is about, the context is an organization in the Philippines called, Gawad Kalinga. Sorry, one more. This is the, oops. It's a Tagalog word which means the offering of care. And it's very much, it really works with the poorest of the poor. This organization came from a Catholic charismatic group called Couples for Christ, which has almost 1 million families, members. And in 1995, a group of them said that we should not just be forming Christian families for the middle class. We have to reach the poorest of the poor. So the leader, Tony Meloto, together with, who's a graduate of our school, and together with many young people, went to live in the biggest slum in the Philippines. Bagong Silang is called, with about 700,000 people living in that slum. Criminals, prostitutes, drug addicts. People said he was crazy to go there with his teenage daughters, but he said, we have to reach out. And so that's the context. In the work, when they were talking to people about their being children of God, their self-worth, their dignity, at some point the people told them, we cannot feel what you're saying. We cannot feel that we are our self-worth, that can be proud of ourselves if we live like this. And if we are ashamed to invite you into our home, then we cannot be proud of ourselves. So that led the organization to move beyond formation to start building homes. This is the typical home that we built. They're very colorful because they were first built in the slums and it's very dark in the slums, so they needed light. So that's the context. The particular story of commitment I want to tell you is about a group of students who in 2005 helped to build these houses. And the context was that in 2004, there was a big typhoon in eastern Luzon which destroyed many, many towns. And we helped, and we committed that we'd work in one particular town. It's called Gabaldon, Nueva Ecija, about 5 hours by bus from Manila. And our students have been going there for many years because they climb mountains there. And so we said we will go there, and we committed to help build about 100 homes there. And so here are the homes then. That was December 2004. This is November 2005. By that time, we had finished about 30 or 40 houses in there. That's the picture that we have. The particular story I want to tell you is about a group of students, several from our own high school. They first went there because just an excursion, free bus ride, we can go there. But they got, I guess the English word is they got hooked. And so they started going that was summer vacation. They went for 9 consecutive weekends, leaving on a Friday night, building Saturday and Sunday, and coming home Sunday night. And I can only say they were really transformed. One young woman put it this way. She said, I went to Gabaldon for a friend. Actually, that's the way it went. She was invited, let's go. But it flourished into something more pure and beautiful. I was there for my country, my brothers and sisters who need me there. She says, it's funny, the entire day I built houses. By the end of it, I learned how to inspire and how to be inspired. I learned there is hope for everyone. I learned that I have a purpose. There's a story we like to tell about this young man. His name is Dan Navarro. When he was in his earlier studies, he passed, but that was about all. The family had run into some financial problems. And so the mother told him, son, she said, you know that you're applying for a scholarship because we have financial problems. But you're away every weekend going to this place. And we are worried that you will not get that scholarship. This was actually a classmate of his telling the story. But the classmate said, this was November already. Do you know that this semester he was coming almost every weekend here? But that semester was the first semester that he got honors. And the reason, so he said to the people, you thank us for being here to build homes for you. But I must tell you that you have given us something more. You have given us a meaning and purpose in life. And for Dan, because of that meaning and purpose of life, his studies became better. Everything became better. His family relationships became better. So that's what I mean by the transformation that happened to them. So they would go there. The structure was they would build. The summer they went every weekend, then less frequently, but they'd still go on weekends. The structure they had was they would build during the day. They were not experts, so they did the not so complicated work. We got experts to put the windows and other things like that. But they would go there, and then at night they would sit down with the people who were building the houses, for whom they were building the houses, and they would share stories. They would reflect what happened during the day, and a very deep relationship and a very deep bonding happened among them. Very deep friendships, I would say. For I know one young woman, she became so close to there that even on Christmas, she would only spend a few hours with her own family, and she would be there with his family. The friendships had become so deep. We call them Team Gabaldon. Still a well-known in Ateneo. This Bawat Atenista Bayani in Tagalog means Ateneo is our school. Every Atenean, they said, is I suppose a hero doing these things. So that's Dan in there. The main story I want to tell you about commitment is about this young woman, Therese Fernandez. We call her Reese. I rode with her on the bus. The first time we went there, we sat together for 5 hours on that bus and had a very long chat, became very good friends. She's part of this group, and the story of commitment, I want to tell you about her. It's also the story of this woman, Ning, who comes really from the poorest of the poor, and the story of this bag. There are other stories I could tell you, but in 15 minutes, this is the easiest story to tell. So, here is Ning. I told you she's from the poorest of the poor. We call them scavengers in the Philippines. They go to the dump sites and see whatever they can get to sell. She was there with her children, working there. Among the things they would get from there were the textile factories would throw away the cut parts that they could not use. So they would take them and they would weave them into rugs like this. They would sell them, but most of the money went to the middleman. So they just earned about 12 pesos a day, which is about 25 cents a day. Obviously, not very, very much. So what happened is, this is Therese. She went there with a group of young social entrepreneurs, sorry that disappeared from here, and they founded an organization or a business called Rags to Riches. I could tell you stories about the others. The young man here, TJ here, went to Xavier School. Father Alfasa is a Jesuit. Bamakino here and Mark Ruiz here went to Ateneo Grade School, High School, and College. They have their own businesses. But this says that this group, the people said that this group considered a social problem as an opportunity. So they went there and they looked at what the women were doing and said, can we help them to earn more? Actually, it was not easy. In the beginning, the women, the urban poor have been exploited so much, they really distrust you. But when I asked them, why did you join? And they said, because they kept persisting. They kept coming. They came into our house and they ate with us. That was very big for them. nakikain sa amin, malaking bagay para sa amin. That's in Tagalog. They ate with us, and that's a big thing with us. So they finally joined. The first thing they did was to cut out the middleman, and the cut out the middleman, and to teach the people that the customers preferred plain colors. So they improved. They began to earn about $1 a day. Let me share with you what Therese, what she said about this commitment. So why she did this? She said, Therese said, all of us, those who went to Gabaldon, witnessed the rise of the people in Gabaldon from the debris of natural calamities to a colorful and vibrant community. Seeing this transformation also transformed us in a very profound way. We dreamed of things bigger than ourselves because we saw how vision could become reality if we worked hard to make it happen. For me, she said, this dream led me to become a social entrepreneur. She was taking a business degree after that. Okay, so now they were earning $1 a day. But the group said, that's not enough. They're not going to get out of poverty at $1 a day. Then something happened. I still don't know who came. So after a long meeting that they had, they said, how can we make higher value products? And somebody said, let's talk to a fashion designer. I'm still amazed how they thought about that. But they did. They did. So they went and talked to this man, Rahul Aurel, one top fashion designers in the Philippines, make dresses for the very rich women in the country. And they still love to tell the story of their first encounter. They said that Rahul took the rug, and she said, if you fold it like this and put some buttons, it can be a wine holder. And if you make it like this, she said, it can be a women's bag. And that's what happened. So here are two of the top fashion designers in the Philippines. She's also a graduate of our school, Amin Aranas. And they founded this social enterprise called Rags to Riches, R2R, Aranas in there. Here are the women. Here is Carmen, who actually works in the chapel where I say Mass on Sundays, part of that group too. And here are others. They now have about 200 core and about 900 women who work with them. You can't imagine the social and economic gap between these two groups. Immense gap between them. And it was not easy. I remember talking to the production designer in the first year, and she said, the first year, we had an 80% rejection rate. We took the bag they made, and we said, this quality of work will not do. You have to rip it apart and put it together again. So, of course, they would be hurt, sulk, and so on. But because of their long experience of working with the poor, they knew how to deal with it. They could deal with them and that. One experience I had 3 years later with them, they said they brought these women to the high-end shops in the Philippines, where you get Gucci, Louis Vuitton, Hermes bags. And they showed these bags to these women, and the first reaction was they were angry. They said, this bag costs more than everything I own. They said. So, but they said, all right. After you finish being angry, let's take a look at it. Take a look at the workmanship, the sewing, and the insides. Can we do this? So that illustrates for you what they had to do. They had to be able to move back and forth between this world. It's a social enterprise built on people, the poor women, and includes also a lot of indigenous communities. They now use materials from indigenous communities. Planet, ecological concerns, they recycle things, but especially they're creating livelihoods for indigenous communities. And of course, profit, a better life for the poor. So that's what they had. And it has really transformed the life of these women. The woman Ning that I told you about, when I had a conversation with her last year, I asked her, Ning, so what has changed in your life? And she says, well, I now think of saving for the education of my children, saving for a house. And she said something which caught all of us by surprise. She said, I've learned to distinguish between my needs and my wants. Wow, says Ning. What does that mean? So she said, I know I have to take care of the education of my children. And so I listed down everything that I earn everything I spent for, and I decided I do not need a cell phone. We were very impressed. So it illustrates the transformation that they've gone to in just 4 or 5 years. So that's one. And it's a lifelong commitment for her and many of the other young people. Here is another one. I cannot tell more stories about this one. This girl, Melissa Jung, she started working with indigenous peoples. I knew her also in college, and her passion was to work for indigenous peoples. But the first summer in the southern island of Mindanao, what happened was that there was a drought, and the people were starving, and she could not do anything for them. So she came home broken, depressed, not knowing what to do. So we had a very long conversation. And finally, she agreed, she decided, I have to know how to create an economy for them. So she learned entrepreneurship. She tried several things. They failed. She's now very successful. She works now in a province north, and they have an organic farm, 5-hectare organic farm. And she also works with other farmers around. And she has created markets for them. She has put up several shops where the produce are sold, together with produce from other indigenous communities. And she has put up 2 restaurants, which use these materials, and they are very successful. So she has done the production and also created markets for them. But it was a long haul. And she has a foundation called Got a Heart Foundation. These are farmers from her group. That's Melissa there. These are young people who help her. What have we learned? We learned that long-term commitment comes from a deep shared engagement. And in the case of those who take something very risky like social enterprise, it takes the experience of seeing that it's possible to change if you work hard at it. And that was their experience going to that place called Gabaldon. The other one that's important is mentors. This particular group, I was with them pretty much all the way. And what they say is that it's very important to have a senior person with them because they are also unsure in the beginning. They are afraid. And they need reassurance that what they're doing is okay. This young man here is Mark Lawrence, who is an instructor in philosophy. And he's now doing this almost full-time. He still teaches some philosophy. And he does a lot of the work. This is still Dan. It's another young woman, Nicole Alquiros, who works with these young people as well. So that's what we have learned. So an epilogue. Reese and Melissa were the very first successful social entrepreneurs from our university. But they've started a trend. Now our undergraduate school and graduate school of management has become a training hub for social enterprises. They have a track where the students in business can opt to specialize in social enterprise. And it's worked together with this organization, Gawad Kalinga and McKinsey. And they turn out a lot. Gawad Kalinga now has moved from building houses, forming families, to creating businesses for them. So they got out of poverty. And about of the 100 or so social enterprises for them, 90% come from our school because of the trend these young people started. And it has extended abroad because of exchange programs we have with France. We get about 300 interns every year, from 3 months to 1 year, coming from the French business schools, like Haute Étude Commerciale, HEC in Paris. And so you hear French all the time in these places. So it has also spawned a great trend, which is wonderful. Last thing, these are the women who used to collect garbage. And for me, one of the most rewarding things in this work is that seeing them over the years transformed. Every time I go, every year, you would see they have a lot more self-confidence. So here they are with the bags. They now run the production. They manage the whole production. This woman here, Cynthia, she's the head of the whole production. She's the head of recruitment. She's the head of HR and so forth. So the young people, Reese and others, they handle design and marketing, which is not easy. But so it's also a story of these women. Finally, it's also a story of that community we started with. We still go there. I'll be meeting with these young people on November 29 to review the year with them. and we'll visit our first community in Gabaldon on November 30. One final story about that community. Yeah, just one final story. They tell me that what has happened is they have learned to take care of their families, but they also learn to take care of one another. The example they give is sometimes they say at lunchtime, we notice that one house does not have any smoke. That means they're not cooking. That means they're not going to eat. So we send some food over. So it's also a transformation of them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Father. Thank you very much, Father Ben. And now we move to Father Joseph Amoroso from Zimbabwe.
Thank you. Good morning to you all.
Good morning.
Thank you. So what I'll do is basically to follow the guidelines that I received from the Sipei team. I'll touch on commitment in general, and then I will touch on discernment, ecological solidarity, domestic education. Then I'll end with an example from St. George's College where I'm rector there. I believe that commitment is a decision that one takes. It's not something that is caused by external forces, but it's something that comes from within us, and we make a decision to commit. And that we not only commit to things that excite us, but we can commit to things that do not excite us, but we commit to those things because it's the right thing to do. And I believe that today the world lacks committed people. And in politics, the people who have influence, if they lack commitment to the right causes, they've cost millions of lives around the world. And we know that in relationships, lack of commitment have left many people heartbroken. And today, like Joseph said, we heard him that with our lack of commitment to our relationship with nature is killing Mother Earth. But I believe that commitment starts with our immediate world before we can actually think of committing to bigger things. That's a picture of teachers and parents from one of our very poor schools in Zimbabwe, St. Peter Claver. Now, I quite like that picture of commitment because 3 years ago we discovered that in this school, kids, by the time they get to grade 3, grade 4, they could not read. So we realized that there were lack of books and also lack of skills. And last year, a charitable organization called Rotary Dawn Harare donated a set of books and then said the condition was that to involve the parents in using these books so that they can help their children at home when they go back home. Now, I was struck with the commitment of this group of parents. Not every parent came, but a particular group said, we want to help our children. And they were walking every day 7 to 10 kilometers to come to be trained so that they can supervise homework at home, homework while they are at home. And I was quite struck with that kind of commitment. And I believe that it's within the immediate world that we can show commitment before we can think of big ways of committing ourselves either to the environment or to Mother Earth. But it starts with that simple commitment to our children and to the education and future of our children. That picture is from the north of the country. We call these people the people of the Great River, the Tonga people. And talking about discernment, Pope Francis, in one of his famous interviews, said, discernment is a tool for struggle. And I quite like that image, that discernment is a tool for struggle. Now, looking at that, I'll come back to that image. But talking about the Tonga people, the people of the Great River, it was discovered after many years that these people were very committed and connected to their local environment and resources. That when they go fishing, because their whole lives are built around fishing and all. So when they go fishing, when they come out with the fish in a net, they all select what they don't need or they don't want to use. Or if they catch crabs which they don't eat, they throw it back into the river. Now, the fishmongers, when they catch fish, they select what they need and leave everything to die on on the riverbank. So I quite like their kind of commitment to their immediate environment. But I like the image of the boat there and the rowing as a tool for struggle. And I can imagine when there's a windy day, and how the waves could be making that boat difficult to row. And I think we're living in a world where there's so many winds blowing, and discernment becomes a big challenge. Today we can talk about the world of instance. The world is obsessed with instant things. Instant phones, instant photo, instant coffee, instant everything. And the shortcutting that whole process of discernment. And especially if you look at advertisements, they're notorious when it comes to that. Back home, there's an advertisement, I think it's a bank, or I can't remember what, I think it's a bank. When they give you the 3 minutes, the 4 seconds or 10 seconds of talking about it, at the end, there's this famous line. It says, go no further, think no further. So what they're saying that we've done your discernment, you don't have to discern further. Just decide, just do it. And I think our virtue of discernment causes us to step back from things like that. And as you know that a lot of advertisements don't tell you the impact of the product they're selling you. If they're selling you a phone, they won't tell you what impact that has on the environment, how it is made, and all these things. They just want you to see that it's a good gadget, buy it. Stop, don't discern, just do it. And I think we find ourselves really being challenged in a situation like that. So commitment is difficult for me if there's no proper discernment. You cannot commit if you have not discerned. You've got to have a process that takes you to that commitment. Now that's St. George's College. Every year our prefects have to lead by example. They plant trees and we look after those trees. So you can date back 20 years, when we've been planting trees. So prefects have to show that we're leaders by planting trees, by looking after the trees. And it's a community event. You can see the teachers, and you can see the man in the overall. Those are casual workers, teachers there, the headmaster is hidden right behind there. It's a community kind of thing. We acknowledge the importance of that. But in Zimbabwe, the whole idea of planting trees is usually a joke. Now, I'll give you an example. 2 years ago, during the National Tree Planting Day, which we have every year, our president visited one of our schools for that occasion. And of course, it was in the paper. It was the president holding the tree and planting it and all these things. Next, the following year, I visited that school and I was just talking about how the school is going. And a lot of people in the school were talking about that day when they hosted the president. That was a big event and it was exciting and all these things, and it was successful. And then eventually I said, where is the tree that the president planted? And they said, well, it's down there. We'll take you there. I said, sure. So after lunch, they took me there. We couldn't find the tree. No sign that the tree was ever planted. It died. And in Zimbabwe, it's just an example. In Zimbabwe, every year we plant trees and we leave them to die. And plant some more next year and leave them to die. There is no commitment. And I've always said that it's better for us to plant one tree and commit to it and water it and make sure that it grows than to plant 100 trees and leave them to die. So there's a big challenge there. And I think listening to Joseph this morning, I realized that there's a lot we need to do, I think, in our schools. Not just planting trees, but it has to be a consciousness within the school. Like I said, from commitment, simple commitment of picking up papers in the school. And I say to most of the school that our students should learn to pick up paper. Because usually in some schools that are prestigious like these, the papers are left to be picked up by casual workers. We've got lots of workers there. And kids just pass them and say, there are workers around after all, and they can pick them up. And I've always said the students have to be conscious that they should pick up papers. So for me, simple commitment like that makes a whole big difference. Our biggest challenge with commitment, I think, is originating, at least in Zimbabwe, perhaps in Africa, from family. There are too many broken families. And our students witness their parents not committing to marriage. And it's very hard for them to learn to commit. And also, a lot of parents, especially those who bring their children to high fee-paying schools, just believe that the schools can do everything. They leave the child in the morning and they pick the child in the evening, and they hope everything has been sorted out. They don't want to get involved. A lot of time we encourage parents to come for arts days, sports days, to just support the children, but they don't. They don't commit. So there is a big problem here about commitment. And I think we need to involve parents in that whole area of commitment so that they can give examples to the children who come to our schools. For me, men and women for others. After listening to Joseph this morning, I said to myself, should we begin to rethink that phrase now? To talk about forming men and women for others, with others, and with nature. I don't know how we should do that. I think more and more, we've been challenged that we have to, I think for me, to commit to others is not enough. I think others minus F, I think is meaningless. So I think we've got to have a way of rephrasing that men and women for others, with others, to include nature. I don't know how we can phrase it, but I think more and more there's a call to changing our language around there. Now, St. George's College, that like I heard from Joe the other time, have a similar project. We call that service project. Now, for us, it's important that service project is a requirement. After Form 4, before they go for Form 5 and 6, after which they go to university, all the students coming to St. George's College have got to do 4 weeks of service project, which means they go to one place that is disadvantaged or community that is disadvantaged, and they spend 4 weeks there, and they come back to the school. For us, it's a requirement. You cannot have a place at St. George's if you don't do that. So those are some of the pictures taken from while our students were on this service projects. So what we do is when they go out there, they spend 2 weeks and come back, what we call half term. They come back and have an evening of sharing experiences. Then they go back to finish the 2 years, the 2 weeks. After that, what we do is we call parents one evening, and then together with the boys, we have an evening where the boys share their experiences. In most cases, it's a very emotional session, because parents, for the first time, they realize that their boys have become men. And most of them really shed tears, listening to their boys talking about working with the handicapped, like that picture in between Cheshire homes, or working in a disadvantaged area where they will be teaching small boys. And for them to realize that they have everything, and they go to a school where they want to teach the small boys, but they don't have a pen and paper, and they have to make do. And they're really very moved by that. And parents find that really very touching. It's a powerful evening where these boys, we all usually declare they've become men. They become men for others, no longer boys for others. They become men with others and for others. So what we do, it doesn't end there. What we do now after that, because we usually do it during Lent. So the boys go on to do a Lenten campaign, where they campaign and fundraise for their agencies. So the boys become creative. It's all done by the boys. We don't get involved. So they can organize arts events, rugby tournaments, just to fundraise and send that money back there. And most of them, eventually, even when they leave school, they're really emotionally and powerfully connected to those agents that they go back even after school to visit them and to support them. Now, looking at what we've learned this week, the conscious, the competent, the compassionate, the committed, I'm more and more thinking that commitment cannot stand by itself. Commitment, I think, has to be seen within the context of the 4 C's. That's how it can make sense. We can't have just commitment by itself. I think it can only make sense within the context of the 4 C's. And I'm thinking that what we need about the 4 C's is not a curriculum. It's not evidence to show that we have students who are compassionate or students who are competent. I think we've got to build a whole spirituality around the 4 C's. And I think Joseph this morning gave us that inertia, I think, to approach the 4 C's as a spirituality rather than little programs that indicate that we've got men who are competent or compassionate and all that. But I don't know how to do that. So I think I leave with us a challenge that how can we develop a spirituality around the 4 C's? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Father Joseph. We've now got just a few moments of personal reflection, and then we'll take some questions after that. Okay, would anyone like to make comment? 1, 2, and 3. So number 1.
Luis Ugalde de Venezuela.
Luis Ugalde from Venezuela. Thank you to Ben and Joe for their presentations. I have just a brief remark regarding the images that Ben showed us. In the first, there are 7 or 8 faces of university students, and in the last one, we have half a dozen of persons of the community with products that they themselves have manufactured. And that beginning with 7 students in a place where there must be thousands, well, it reminded me of the importance of small groups that have decision and leadership. Fe y Alegría, right now, Faith and Joy, is an educational movement in Latin America that has 1.5 million students in about 18 countries. 60 years ago, Fe y Alegría was born in the Catholic University of Caracas with just a group of 7 or 8 students, in the same way as the group he was showing us. These people went to a neighborhood and see that there weren't any schools. But the people of that poor community felt that they had to contribute as well. And that alliance, that union, is something absolutely significant that has actually made Fe y Alegría to have a method that allows it to grow so much. Not only then in the university in Fe y Alegría, we have more than 100 congregations, especially female congregations, working. And in those congregations, there has been as well an interaction between the sisters who live with the poor, but not an aggressive interaction, but rather a mutual learning interaction. And I think that right now, when the congregation is asking that we build bridges, well, I think it's very, very important that no student leaves any Jesuit university without asking him or herself, what does my degree as a lawyer, an engineer, or a doctor mean for the poor? And what does it mean towards the poor, with the poor? If that bridge works in both directions, we learn from them, they learn from us, and there can be a real alliance happening, because if not, our universities are only factories producing the best talent for the great transnational companies.
Gillies.
John Gillis from Sydney, Australia at St Ignatius College. thanks to Joseph and Ben for both of those presentations. I enjoyed them a great deal. And the theme that I picked out or observed there was the way that the 4 C's are working together. Father Ben gave that great example of the young man whose grades improved significantly after doing the work with the people in the villages. And so in that instance, it was a compassion expressed in a conscious and a committed way that led to an increase in competence. That's a clumsy way to put it, but I'm really fascinated by the way that the 4 C's interplay with each other and interact with each other. And my thinking around them has moved from the 4 C's almost being one in each quadrant to being part of something that's much bigger and sits at the heart of whatever our formation, whatever the formation is that we offer to our staff and our students. And that's been the bigger insight for me, so I'm grateful to both of those presentations.
John. Okay. We had a third.
Okay. Sophie Lassagne from France. When I was listening Father Joseph, I was thinking about the Gospel of Mary and Martha. I don't know how you say Martha in English. Martha. Okay, I was thinking about the Gospel of Mary and Martha, because in this Gospel, Jesus said to Martha, so Mary, she had chosen the best place, and she will keep it. So I am asking to myself, is the commitment really to be in action? Because in this special context of this gospel, Jesus seems to say no. So finally, I am saying to myself, the commitment, like Father Joseph said, needs to be at the good place, at the good time. And for that, we have the tool of the Ignatian discernment that can help us to choose the good kind of commitment we need to have.
Javier.
Observation is like my colleague from Belgium after Father Joseph's presentation. I looked at and was struck by that analogy that we are derivative of the earth, not a steward of it. And he talked a lot about reconciliation with that created earth, and I see these two examples of reconciliation with the humanity derivative that's also a part of that is very consistent with this message. And that theme of reconciliation to me is extremely important. And I also think these two examples reiterate Father Joseph's point that you must have a long view on these things and be patient and see the progress in the day-to-day to be a committed person. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Javier.
Yes, Javier Aragay from Barcelona. Well, I wanted to thank, first of all, Joseph Carver's presentation and then the two experiences. It has all been very interesting. I would like to go back somewhat to the general discussion that is being generated here, in the sense that I think we should have a sincere diagnosis. In justice, in social justice and social commitment, we can always improve, but we're going in the right direction. We do many activities. We have our managing teams and our teachers, our educators, very much aligned. But however, I do think if we are honest, our ecological commitment can improve a lot. There is huge room for improvement in general terms. And I think it's important that we see this and we admit this, because only on the basis of this admission can we make important decisions. And at the point in time in which, furthermore, our students are very sensitive, I think, towards this issue. They very rapidly identify with the subject, with the issue, and they anticipate in a manner what our managing teams and our teachers and educators have as part of their inner reflection. So here I think we have to progress, we have to make headway at a much greater speed. If we don't, we'll be lagging behind. And that, concerning our commitment to make sure that we help out people who are persons of conscience and of commitment, it would be a disaster if we weren't up to the task. So the call coming from our speaker today and from the two experiences that we've been listening to is telling us that the path to follow is very important.
Father Joseph?
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm very grateful to the two presenters. When Father Joseph spoke in the morning, something was going on in my mind. I have listened to presentations on the environment and ecology a couple of times, but I was asking myself, what does really this mean? Does it mean anything to me? For instance, when I listened to Al Gore and his presentation, the first thing I said, yes, he's trying to find relevance for himself in the absence of political, power. But when he was presenting today, at some point I said, yeah, it's beginning to make sense. The reason is this: he's coming from a tradition of spirituality, a tradition where I can see God coming in and through what he was saying and the environment. So it's beginning to take on a new meaning to me. But most importantly, what really hit me in the face was his passion. So as I was talking, I was looking at Jesus. I said, his own passion for the kingdom became infectious. Infected fishermen, infected terrorists, if you like, infected medical doctors who followed him. And so his passion began to, have effect on me. And I'm saying, maybe that is what I should take home, passion. And so he answers Father Joseph Arimos' question. What does this mean for us in practice? Passion to commit. Because I think the ultimately passion leads to total commitment. Passion to commit to our teachers, to administrators. Ultimately, when they're passionate, it filters to the students. And the students will be passionate because it is infectious. So once again, thank you all to all the presenters, because I've had a new vision of what we are saying.
Thank you very much.
Marie-Thérèse Michel from France. Thanks for this morning presentations. And Father Joe, you've said that knowing our common story fills our imagination. That means you have emphasized the importance of listening. And then Father Ben, you have said that a long-term commitment comes from deep sharing engagement. So I believe that the challenge when we speak about reconciliation is to stop first and listen to each other so that we can know each other's story. And I wonder if these are not the conditions so that the 4 C's can be implemented.
Paul Donovan from Canada. Again, thank you to all 3 of the presentations today. I think they were very eye-opening. I found myself asking the question at the end of all this, what does commitment mean? Does it mean commitment to a particular cause? Is it about causes? And I think the key for me that in the end ties it together is the word reconciliation. And when we teach our kids about what reconciliation is about, especially I think of when we're doing Genesis, you're doing the story of sin, and there are 4 things that are alienated by our sin. The first is our relationship with God. Second is our relationship with ourselves. The third is our relationship with each other, and the fourth is the relationship with creation and with nature. And all of those things are affected and damaged by human sin. In the Father Aramoso's presentation, he talked about the word discernment as being important because, you know, when I look at the damage of all of that alienation and I try and think of myself as, can I be committed to fixing all of that, to working at all of that? And it's too much. It's too daunting for me. Eamon mentioned earlier, you know, if I'm going to be committed to everything, I end up being committed to nothing. So what do I commit to? And what are we teaching our students to commit to? Do we pick an issue? And again, I go to the exercises for that. That I think we make a mistake if we try to tell the kids that it's this one or that one that you need to be committed to. I think we need to let God do that. And what we do in our formation is we make them conscious of the kinds of things that are out there, the difficulties that are there, the damage that's out there. But we allow the discernment to happen to say, where do my particular talents and gifts serve best in healing, in reconciling in those areas of alienation? So for me, there's a little bit of a great thank you for all of the things that are out there and being presented, but also a caution of saying that our commitment to things needs to show, and the passion of it needs to show, but we need to be careful of not playing God and determining for the students where their commitment needs to go, but allowing God to work in their hearts, to work in their souls, to say, this is where your talents will provide that reconciliation.
Thank you, Paul.
I'm Thomas from Cameroon. I feel like I would like to pronounce a word, the word life, because from the beginning we are talking about ecology and all these presenters. I'm grateful actually to all the presentations, and I think when I look at it, and as we are created in the image and the likeness of God, and when we go to the principle of foundation of the spiritual exercises, there is something related to life too. So I feel like I want to say that we are committed to life, and ecology can be seen according to where we are as commitment to life in a short, middle, or long term. But we are committed to life anyway. And the two presentations we just heard, maybe try to give a content to this commitment to life. So this something is for me important from the beginning. When I heard about commitment, I was looking for we are committed to what, as the question was just asked. Thank you.
Thomas. Down the back.
Mauricio
Garcia from Colombia. Thinking about the issue of commitment, I am remembering right now the image in the cave of the birth, and Ignatius appears there. He is there, and he actually invites us to place ourselves as though we were there, facing the experience of God, the presence of God. I think that the issue of commitment is actually inviting us in that direction, because it is a fact of being present there, and that has to link up with the contemplation to attain love. And that is to put all that we are, as the prayer tells us, so what we are, put it in God's hands. So to commit it, to give it in such a way that we can do what Ignatius tells us in the preamble of the contemplation, that love is placed more on the works than it is on the words. And I think that that is where we have a key in the deepest level of our spirituality. That is what it is to educate and teach committed persons. But this cannot be done if they are not persons of conscience, regarding the problems and challenges they face. It cannot be done if they are not competent persons to be able to face those issues, and it cannot be done if they are not radically compassive persons who feel in their gut and feel invited to what Ignatius gave us in his exercises, to make us present there where God is being made present nowadays in the margins and the limits of history and society. It is there in those limits, in those margins, where we have to become present, where we have to let it all reach us profoundly and let God operate in us what he is operating there, where God is already acting on the situations of injustice, unfairness, poverty, ecological destruction. So there. So I think that, yes, it's important to go into greater depth in commitment. It's essential to go to the deeper roots of our own spirituality, and from there to understand the profound meaning of what it means to be committed.
Ross.
The place where Father Ben was speaking, Bagong Silang, where the Gawad Kalinga program works, we take our students there. And Tony Maloto, the man Father Ben spoke of, who began that program, it's such an inspiring step that he took. And Father Ben spoke a little bit about that. This place, Bagong Silang, you could not get a taxi to drive you in there in the past. It was full of drug dealers, hitmen, thieves. But that's where he went. There is the part of the constitutions where Ignatius says, where will we choose ministries? Where will we send our men? And one of the criteria is to go where no one else will go. And Tony Maloto went to a place where no one else would go. When he went the first time, they said, if you come back next week, we will kill you. And he came back next week with a truckload of cement and concrete blocks and his 2 daughters, and stayed there, and the dream began. So that story stays with me a great deal, and when I think about where our commitment will be, that rule of Ignatius, that guideline, go where no one else will go, is a very challenging one, but a very appealing one.
Thank you, Ross.
Carlos Cupo. Well, at these heights of the seminar, we have grown in conscience. We have been declared competent for something with very powerful presentations. They have made us be compassionate and finally be compassionate towards planet Earth, but we are asked for a commitment. That's the way I see it. I'm not talking about the discourse that has been put forward up till now, thinking of the educational community or thinking of the organizations or the students. I'm thinking about this group here in this room. And this then brings about the question, to commit to what? And this is what I want to share with you. I require clarity. I require concretion. I'm not talking now about the commitment of a school or of a region or of an association of schools. I'm talking of this very same group here in this room in order to be committed to something with a certain renovated conscience, with a declared competence and so on. Well, there is something missing, a document. We require a suggestion, something written, but in this moment I need concretion and clarity. And if it doesn't happen here, if it doesn't take place here, I doubt very much it'll take place outside. And the other way around, what we learn here, what all of us learn here, I think is something that must be stated as of tomorrow. Thank you.
As I listen on the conversation this morning, I think about in the exercises when Ignatius advises on choosing a state of life, and that's the commitment call in the exercises. So it seems to me that a word that we can keep in mind, and I like Carlos's call just a moment ago, I think it's about vocation, right? That we want to help, in the secondary network, we want to help people discover their personal vocation. And that at the secondary level, it's to have exposure to a huge variety of activity and thought and relationship, and that sparks passion. Like our Pedro Arrupe says, that we want to find something that gets us out of bed in the morning. It's a source of the love of God. That's the personal vocation. And I think that Jesuit education leads us to that. And that for those of us in this room, part of our personal vocation is to be educators in the Ignatian tradition. And the world, this is where I think the ecology makes sense. I think in the world today, there's a lot of plastic when it comes to commitment. There's a lot of plastic, there's a lot of disposal when it comes to commitment. And that we want to help train young women and men to be committed to what it is that God has invited them to receive. That it's the source of divine love for them and that they're called to embrace it. And we want to give them the courage, the fortitude, the perseverance to be rooted in the commitment of invitation and to not give into the temptation of a throwaway vocation. I also think in that there's a variety that the society calls us to. I mean, I think we could have passionate conversations about the decree on women, the decree on interreligious dialogue, the decree on ecumenism, that the society gives us a variety of callings that are very, very important. But I think the ecological translates. I mean, I think there's a metaphor in that about the way that we live, vocation, and that the world would tempt to be disposing of or to be plastic in that.
Thank you, Casey.
Ezequiel de Asunción, Paraguay.
Yeah, from Asunción, Paraguay. I'm very grateful about, well, everything, because I see that the Lord is working in the Jesuit schools in the world by means of all these works and initiatives. And I would like to, at the end of this seminar, leave with a challenge. I wouldn't like to fall into the temptation of contemplating only the beauty of what we are doing worldwide, but rather ask ourselves during the rest of today, where should our commitment go as schools of the society? Is it maybe deepening further on our action, or maybe change somewhat and go to other places where the Lord is calling us and flip somewhat? So let us think a bit like that. Let us not stay in our comfort zones. Let us think about where we can go, the new areas that the Lord is calling us to, and that is profound discernment, and for me that will be the commitment of this seminar. Thank you.
Julio de Argentina.
Julio from Argentina. Two things. First of all, to go back on the suggestion of thinking about ecology, I think it is one of the signs of our times, coming maybe outside the church structures as many other signs of the times. And in fact, we are called to fish, to discover the flight of the Holy Ghost precisely through these other structures and discover that God is acting there as well and open up the doors to those different calls. Well, future generations might ask us to justify the commitment of today, and we will really have to justify and be accountable for what we decide and do today. So we have to take that into account. And although clearly the commitment well, excuse me, what is ecology is not the only subject area for commitment. I do think it's rather paradigmatic, and compassion towards the poor is not either the only way of compassion that we are called to work on, but of course it is a paradigmatic or essential mode of compassion. And finally, regarding, as has been done, how to introduce all this in the curricula. Well, let us think as well about the commitment towards the state of life itself, towards everyday actions, towards culture of work, towards working or striving for common good, and towards family life. So to do well what it is our task to do. In a child of 4 up to somebody who is coming to us as a young adult, we have to do it well every day, because it's the everyday life where our commitment is deployed. It means opening the door and saying good morning to our children, and it goes up to the major things that we have been sharing here together.
Julio, is there any other comment? If there's not, there's some major challenges that have been thrown to us today. And as was said, that the Lord is very much alive and well within our discussions as we grapple with our conscience, our competence, our compassion, and now our commitment. And all those words are very much synonymous with the action. And there was that call for clarity. How do we find a better way that we can do things? And now we come to a moment of our personal reflection before lunch. And hopefully in the afternoon we might be able to bring a little more clarity. My thanks to our 3 speakers today, this morning, as well as to the participation, as well as the wonderful work of our support staff to make sure that it's not just the discussion here, but it's a discussion throughout the world. So we'll break now for personal reflection and lunch at 1 o'clock. Thank you.